Wow, that was brutal. What I love about this album is that it's so unexpected. Every song has twists and turns that just really come out of the blue, and it's so interesting and fun to listen to. So we have Tonnen Von Hall, which is a new trio consisting of Markus Reuter, Alexander Dowerk, and Asaf Sirkis. And we have Markus and Alex with us. Guys, thank you so much for joining, and congrats on this debut release.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
tell us about this album.
I think, like you picked in a way, the simplest track, which still has sort of like verse and choruses and two bridges. In terms of the form, it's relatively simple, and um, it was a really challenging album to make. Like it's for me at least, it's mostly based on Alex's ideas. So Kaiserlicht is exclusively written by him, for example, and so that means for me as a player, I need to put my stamp on it without actually writing a part, which is difficult. And in the other examples, the other songs where Alex wrote most of the backing track, let's say, I had to come up with a part that sort of like made the piece evolve in a way, and that was a lot of work for me. So actually, we had Alex's parts or Alex's demos first. Asaf recorded his parts, and then Alex did track his touch guitar parts, and I did my work last. And it was I think we worked on it for 2 years or something, maybe a little longer even.
Alex, tell us about your songwriting process and, what inspires you to write this kind of music.
Yeah, so this particular piece, Kaiserlicht, was written with the intention of writing something like level 6, basically referring to, King Crimson's level 5, um, from my favorite King Crimson period with Trey Gunn in the 2000s. And it actually was also some kind of cornerstone for this album because I had some of these ideas for many years before, and they were just waiting for the right band to manifest themselves. And before even starting these projects, Markus, Asaf, and me, we were performing as the Markus Reuter trio in Czech Republic, and it went great. Absolutely, we played a couple of King Crimson pieces, a couple of Marcus pieces, and we thought like, hey, this is an exceptional trio. So it's very like low maintenance in terms of performing somewhere, because we're all based in Europe. We can perform rather easily. There are no visa stuff or something like that which needs to be solved. And yeah, so we had these concerts, these two, which were great. And then we thought about what can we do? What can we bring to this world, which is somehow also something new for us and also yeah valuable for the listeners.
I have to say,
And
Asaf's drum parts are just astonishing. He is such a creative drummer, and I forget which song it is. It might be Canister, which we're listening to next, but there's sort of like a drum solo, and I've heard Asaf play live, and I've been watching him with what's her name, Emma Ravich, I think her name is, a jazz saxophonist. And so
Yeah.
to hear him playing on this album is just so different and unexpected, and he's unstoppable. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah,
yeah,
the wonderful thing is that he's still playing like a jazz drummer in a way, right? So he has that freedom within the tight structures, and like both Alex and I, we were very impressed, like how he was able to nail all the accents while still playing freely. And I really like his drumming just brings this album to a whole new level. Also, like compared with other, like um, technical prog records or something. Like you don't really ever hear drummer like Asaf in such a context, and I think it's a wonderful thing.
Absolutely. Alex, did you chart these songs out so that he could play, or was it just something that you just worked out by ear or just through listening, or what?
I charted out the whole pieces. Most of the pieces, they're actually based on like a core molecule, I would say, of ideas. And then these ideas are evolving, but they are still, all the pieces are pretty much very focused in terms of the material. So it's not like taking three different parts and putting them together, but it's just one part, and out of this, all the other ideas are emerging. And I, yeah, created a complete chart for Asaf, which if you read the chart, it's just ridiculous, like, like there's so many time changes, and I'm reading this like, okay, will this actually help anybody to play this music?
That's great. All right,
Because
go ahead, Alex.
one thing to that is the reason is also because I'm not using like traditional time signature in terms of that. I'm saying, okay, this piece is written in, let's say, like a 24th or something, but there's a lot of compound meters, like 5/16, 3 times 9/16, and then something. And in the end, you end up with something like 37/16 notes. And so you cannot even put it together in terms of like quarter notes. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's take a listen to Kanister. What can you tell us about that track?
The Kanister is based on this curved rhythm. So maybe you're familiar with like this Swiss composer Don Lee, which also was like a collaborator with Nick Batch long, long, long time ago. And he has this idea of like bending time, and by this also creating a space that is bending. And I thought, like, I love this concept. Let's bring this to like a metal and rock sound, Let's create this illusion that there's no constant meter anymore, but the whole time is contracting and expanding. So everything in this song is based on this one rhythm.
Markus, anything to add?
This is like one of my favorite solos ever I played on this piece, because there was, as Alex just said, there was this space, and yeah, I love this piece. It's incredible, and I think that the solo is very, very special. So,
All right, let's cue it up. I love it. It's great. Super, super cool. Yeah, so this album just came out January 31st, right? Less than 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
Awesome. And how's the response been?
Overwhelming positive so far. Actually, more positive even than we anticipated. I mean, we love this music, but it's very demanding, challenging music that also pushes the boundaries in several aspects. Um, we actually, I think, anticipated a bit more, like people maybe not understanding it, but even the reviews, which are at the beginning, like you can read that the people have some problems, like they are not familiar with this kind of music or they don't catch the feeling. But at the end of the review, it's like, okay, I understand. There's something inside it which is just very valuable, like very unique and great. So, yeah.
Yeah, I have to say, after seeing you guys at the Moon June Music Festival as Anchor and Burden, um, I expected to hear more Anchor and Burden like music, but this is it's very different. It's more, I guess, mechanical and less like Sun O gonna melt your face off, huge frequencies. I also love the sound of this album. I think it's really well mixed and mastered. So I know Marcus, you did a bunch of that too. It sounds great. It's a lot of fun to listen to. Uh, but
I mean,
I want to hear from you.
there would have been no point to have another band that sounds like Anchor and Burden. I mean, and so Tonnen Von Hall is a completely different concept, and I think that it's not just sonic. I think sonically it's really good. Yes, it's mixed very well. So I think like all the production choices that we took from coming from Alex's compositions or original ideas, let's say, were geared to make the whole thing very musical. So even though it is a weird record, I would agree, and it's complex, but really in terms of like just if you're just listening, you can bob your head, and it doesn't really matter if there's a 37 or because there's some sort of groove, there's some sort of glue in there, musical glue that makes things work. And I think that's also what I found kind of like challenging because it really required me to pour like all of myself into this. So it was not just the playing, it was not just the composing, it was like everything. And Fabio Trentini, who makes this, uh, he's just a great musical person, and like choosing this, mixing it is just a big part of the whole process, making this thing work. And I think, I mean, I have a copy here. It's just came out as a wonderful product, and I mean, product is a strange word, but I mean like a physical object, right? It's very nice, and yeah, I think it's got really nothing to do with Anchor and Burden, with the exception of like 11 pieces or so on the record that we haven't mentioned, but because we have these interludes, short interludes between like 20 seconds and 45 seconds or something, which are free improvised touch guitar duos with lots of distortion. And that's more Sun-like, as you were saying.
Like guitar duets from hell.
Well, will you be touring and playing any of this music live?
Yeah, I mean, we hope so. We are open for bookings. Um, I'll do a couple of playthroughs soon, so I'm relearning the pieces, which is very challenging because they are not only challenging in terms of the musical content, but also in terms of the technique. So, for example, there's this piece called Antlitz, which is also present in the EP, and the whole piece is based on like a mechanical touch figure, which is very challenging to play if you play just a couple of seconds. But the whole piece is based around it because I like to challenge myself so technically. So by practicing the piece, by being able to perform it, record it, I will become a better player. The downside is if I didn't play it for let's say half a year or longer, I need to relearn it. And I think like, my God, why you always compose this difficult music? Like I have to practice several months already, to be able to play this.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's something that's important to mention, that some of these compositions, they're based on sort of like an exercise, right? Like and that kind of like creates a new harmonic space as well. So some of these pieces, they sort of like exist in a chromatic space where people are still drawn to kind of like, you just have sort of an idea what the root note is, but then everything else kind of like maybe shifting all the time. So I think that's also something that is pretty new for people to hear. And then, as Alex said, like we're referencing some of the King Crimson sound by using certain, like symmetrical scales and stuff like that, but never as sort of like a one thing going through a whole track. Things are always in flux and change and get really dissonant sometimes. But then I think like the musicality of the performances and compositions, sort of like it's not super obvious how crazy it really is, and I think that's a cool thing.
Absolutely. I don't know if I know that you're friends with Jan Serfeld,
Yeah.
but he's got a cover of Meshuggah's Bleed on the new Panzer Ballet album with it just sounds like kind of like the expanding and collapsing time signatures. It's so wild to hear how people are playing with rhythm nowadays. It's so sophisticated and interesting. I really love it. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, Jan loves this record. And I haven't heard the new Panzerballet record yet, but
Yeah, it's awesome. I don't know when it's coming out, but he sent me a copy and it's really good.
yes, yes. Yeah, there's one last thing maybe to add, is that you remember I was in a band called the Crimson Project a while
Yes.
ago, and two of the pieces on this record were actually written for the Crimson Project. It's a piece called Kraken and one called Ein Abdruck vom Messer im Herzen, the title song, right?
Yeah.
uh, and those were the two pieces that I had originally written for a six-piece band. And at some point, I brought one of the pieces to Stickman, and it was just too much for us. So, like, once, and then I met Alex. I mean, I had met Alex before, but I showed Alex one of the pieces and showed him the lead part, and he picked it up right away. And that sort of like was an initial moment in deciding to actually make this record. And Alex, thank you for making that happen. So,
Thank you for writing this wonderful piece. I mean, I heard this track and I you know, playing King Crimson songs, it's fine. I mean, a lot of people do it and it has its value. But for me, it's kind of a shame that nobody takes this as a basis and then expands it into their own space. I mean, obviously you have to analyze a lot, you have to get to a certain musical and technical level, but it's possible. I mean, nowadays musicians are better than ever. And I heard this piece and it's like, wow. I mean, if I would have been in this in the Crimson Project, I would like, let's do this. Oh my God, I will do anything to bring this to life. It's a wonderful composition.
Yeah.
yeah.
Alex Anthony Faida's CD, which I have right
Mm-hmm.
here actually, is one of those few projects that actually
Yeah.
expands on King Crimson music. And this quote from Robert on the front: Alex Anthony Faida plays my guitar parts better than I do. And it's not about,
Which is true.
which is true. But that's not what it's about. But what I love about this and what you're talking about is, let's take this music and explode it. Let's bring something new into the world through it. So if you're into King Crimson, particularly that 2000s era that Alex was complimenting and referring to earlier, you're going to love this album. So it's on Bandcamp, and I'll put the URL on the bottom of the screen here. Anything else, that you want to share before we wrap up and listen to Erdmantel?
So Erdmantel is special in that regard that I had a clear genre before I was writing the piece. So in this case, and I think nobody would recognize this, I wanted to create like a stoner metal song, but without the constant um, the constant rhythmical feel, you know. So it has like this very slow groove, but actually is super fast, and um, there is no constant like quarter notes or something like that. You know, it's basically like a whole series of arpeggios, and they have different length, but still they have this like groovy, slow, and heavy feel. So yeah, this is like my interpretation of sophisticated, weird stoner metal.
Well, I have to say, when
Yeah.
I'm picking out songs for these interviews, I just sit and listen to the album 2 or 3 times, and then like while I'm doing something else, or sometimes I'm really focused, and occasionally a track will just really stand out, and I go, I need to play this for someone. That's what happened with Antlitz, which is on the most recent weird music playlist. But this one, I was like, okay, this will be perfect for the interview. So it's really excellent, and I'm excited to play it for everyone. And again, congratulations to all three of you guys on the release of this new album.
Thank you.
All right, guys, I'll catch you at the end. Here we go. It's track 1. Yes, it does, gent.